Good morning, afternoon or evening, wherever you are. I'm Paul Clark and welcome to my studio. Now, we're well into the new year, so let me know if you're fed up of hearing the introduction and I'll think of something new. Anyway, what have I got for you lovely people today? Well, it's another one in my inspiration series, and this is an artist that many of you may not have heard before, and that's James Fletcher Watson. Been a big inspiration to me, so we're going to be having a look at painting this lovely little waterfall inspired by his work. So come and join me and we'll paint this step by step together. So James Fletcher Watson is regarded as one of the leading English watercolour artists of his time. He was born in Surrey but grew up in Norfolk, where he was greatly inspired by the beauty of the landscape. He later moved to the Cotswolds, where he set up the Windrush Gallery, where his studio is still used for exhibitions and courses. Now, I picked up this book from a charity shop years ago, and bizarrely it's got a sticker saying Vancouver Public Library, so no idea how it got to a charity shop in Eastbourne. Anyway, James Fletcher Watson was a real exponent of painting from life and getting out into the great outdoors. 75% of his paintings were done plein air. He even converted his car into a mobile studio so he could sit and paint when the weather was bad. Anyway, I just love the looseness and freshness of both his watercolours and pencil drawings, so full of life. And his work wasn't just of local scenes, but he travelled all over the world painting things exactly as he saw them. I just love the muted colours on this one. So this is the scene that today's tutorial is based on, and I'm not painting exactly the same, but I'm just using it as a guide and hopefully gaining some valuable experience. Okay, so for today's materials, my paper is some Bockingford Rough. It's £250, nice and thick, so won't need stretching, but any decent watercolour paper will do. My colours today are cobalt blue, cadmium yellow, yellow ochre, sap green, burnt umber, burnt sienna, Payne's grey and a little dioxazine purple, and just 3 brushes from my range, a number 12 and number 6 round, and my trusty number 3 rigger. Here is the pencil sketch, and as ever, this one is free to download from my website, link in the description below. Off we go! I'm not pre-wetting my paper today, I'm just going straight in with some cobalt blue, leaving lots of gaps for clouds, but dropping in clean water here and there to get some soft edges. So while I've still got the cobalt blue on my brush, let's put in some of these details in the waterfall, using my number 12 brush. So to add a bit of variety, I've dropped in some dioxazine purple into my cobalt blue mix. And here a touch of yellow ochre straight into the wash while it's still damp. So just try and paint these brush strokes in the direction and the flow of the water. Next for these trees, I'm using my normal mix for green of cadmium yellow and cobalt blue, and I'm using the dry brush technique, keeping the brush flat to the paper and picking up some of its texture. And also dropping in lots of wet washes into the wet paint. And I'm making sure I leave plenty of gaps for the light to pass through the trees. A little bit of splattering here and there doesn't go amiss, and I'm just dropping in darker values of green and other colours such as burnt sienna directly into these wet washes. exactly the same over here, just letting all those lovely colours mix and blend on the paper. Be brave, be bold, and just let the paint work for you. So I'm just continuing this bank down here with lots of water, lots of wet washes. There's too many mixes to tell you all the colours, but just have fun and experiment, see where it takes you. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if James Fletcher Watson actually sat there on location painting this scene. I don't actually know where it is. If anyone has any ideas, please let me know. Definitely somewhere in the UK. So let's make things a little more interesting, and I'm going to paint in some dark Sidene purple straight into the wet wash. So now we need to let this totally dry, and as I'm trying hard to do a dry January, it's just a cup of Earl Grey tea. So when that's totally dried, I'm coming back in with the dry brush technique again, just to add some more detail onto these trees. But keep it simple, don't overwork it. Right, so this is definitely what I would call the ugly stage, because it's looking all very much a mess at the moment. So you must continue on, and hopefully it'll all come together. Right, next for the bridge, and I'm starting with a very watery mix of burnt umber. And then mixing into the wet wash a darker value of Payne's Grey. Keeping my number 12 brush moving freely with quick, confident strokes. Next, I'm painting in all the rest of these rocks with a very light watery value of the burnt umber. Oop, mustn't forget this little detail through the arch of the bridge. Okay, so now for the details on the tree, and I'm starting with a very watery wash of yellow ochre, but then dropping in straight away some burnt umber. And I've now switched to my smaller number 6 brush. And for this tree here in the background, just like James Fletcher Watson has done, I'm painting in a much cooler colour. And obviously just painting the branches in the gaps. And a really nice dark value for this little sapling thing growing here. Of course, my trusty number 3 rigger needs to come out here for these spindly branches. It really is the perfect brush for these fine tapered ends. Now for that lovely dark value underneath the arch of the bridge. And try not to make your edges too crisp and clear. These bridges often have very crusty edges to them. Okay, next for some details on the rocks, and I'm using the same brown mix, and it's all about creating a shadow side, usually along the bottom edge and one side. Here I'm just dropping in a little burnt sienna into the wet wash. So many have asked me if I can include a section painting in real time, so for this next couple of minutes, this is actually the speed I paint. So today I'm really trying to get a painterly feel to this picture, so I'm letting a lot of these short brushstrokes show, which takes it slightly away from realism and more towards an arty feel. It's something that you see a lot in James Fletcher Watson's work, and it's not something that I often do. But I always say it's good to try different approaches. You can always learn a lot from other artists. And that's why I think there is value in copying the master's work. You can just learn so much. So next for the details here on the bridge, and I'm using the same brown mix but a much watery version, and trying not to put in every brick and stone. Let your eye just fill in the rest. A few more little grassy details with short dabby strokes, again using my number 6 brush. So I'm just finishing off with a few, shall we say, movement details in the waterfall, but again, try not to overdo this, keep it simple. And obviously follow the direction that the water is flowing. Just beginning to fiddle a bit with the water, so we'll leave it there. Sound effects please. And finally, one of my favourite techniques, I'm just softening some of these hard edges with a damp tissue. So you can see that this edge here is just too clean and sharp, so I'm just going to smudge it in a little. There we go, all done, and this one in just under 3 hours. Okay, so reviewing it next morning with fresh eyes, I just feel that we could do with a little bit of spray into the water. It just looks a little bit static. So I'm just taking my magic scalpel and scratching out a few suggestions of water spray. That should do it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did, and you'll give it a go. Let those watercolour paints flow. And just use these inspiration series just purely as practices, just as a way of learning new techniques. Never put pressure on yourself to make it a masterpiece. Anyway, as ever, please don't forget to like, leave a comment. I do read everyone. Subscribe if you haven't already. It is free. And of course, I look forward to seeing you all again next week for another Watercolour Wednesday. Take care. Cheers now.